So Abe, thanks a lot for doing the interview this afternoon. I really appreciate it. I want to ask you some questions around grazing, soil health, really the entire kind of movement, if you will, that's going on with pasture-raised or pasture-based agriculture. So Abe, what do you think some of the broader economic impacts are as we move to continue increasing the amount of grass-fed beef that's produced and those practices around rotational grazing?
The broader economic impacts, I think, have to do with a lot of the externalities starting to be addressed with our protein production model. So before, we were writing off water quality, erosion damage to infrastructure, flooding, drought, wildfire. And with grazing becoming more and more primary, there's the possibility that we're going to start healing soil, locking land in place, cleaning water, preventing flooding, and so forth. And we're going to see economic benefits from that as a whole society. So that's a major piece of it.
Mm-hmm. And can you name some of those economic benefits? What do you think tangibly for society is going to happen economically?
On a healthcare basis, people eating healthy, mineral-rich food that comes from good soil, certainly that's probably one of the biggest ones, because medical expenditures are so big for poor health, and a lot of that comes from poor diet. So savings that come from, in effect, preventative healthcare from eating well from food that comes from grass-finished foods. That'll be a big piece of it. On the environmental services part of it, I think 2012 there was $133 billion expenditure in the U.S. on cleaning up after weather-related disasters. Flooding, storms, erosion, all of this adding up. When you start talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of impact in the country per year from things that can be prevented if raindrops soak in where they land, which is an outcome that grass farming can and does achieve, then we can start talking about real money. 100 billion here and 100 billion there adds up to real money eventually.
No question. No, those are big environmental and economic impacts. So there's some people that criticize a pasture-based or grass-based model of agriculture, saying that it's really not sustainable. I mean, what's your response to that?
It seems to me that it's modeled on the most sustainable, natural productivity system that I've ever seen, which is prairies and herbivores, for example. The grasslands of the earth, we're talking about tens of millions of years of coevolution between grasslands and grazing animals and predators, growing the best soils on earth, soils that soak water in and make very good use of sunshine. So in terms, and without fertilizer, chemical inputs and so forth, mining nutrients that are tens of feet down in the earth, that's all pretty good news to me. I would have to disagree with the people who think it's not sustainable, because the potential for very low input, very high productivity, very high quality food, very high provision of environmental service, and very effective harvest of solar energy to grow our food and to generate the environmental services and really run our civilization on solar energy instead of fossil fuels, that epitomizes sustainability to me.
Mm-hmm. Great, I appreciate that. So we know that policy has an impact on what people do on the land. What kind of changes do you think we need to see in policy to continue to have increases in cover cropping, rotational grazing, and regenerative agriculture?
The basis for me, I think, for good policy is good monitoring. Topsoil is the fundamental resource on Earth, and in any complex system, like an Earth system or an economy or a household with a checkbook, you monitor the fundamental resource. We haven't been monitoring the health of soil. We're increasingly monitoring the health of water, but beginning to count as the best management practice monitoring of topsoil, health, crumb structure, aggregation, nutrient content, carbon content, infiltration, cover, and so forth. The monitoring, to me, and especially looking for change that's brought about by good land managers working to heal land and grow food and fiber. That is the basis for good policy, and that can lead to policies that our policies need to have as the final check. Does this build soil or degrade it? And so I think that there can be a lot of variability in the policies, but we need monitoring of soil as a basis for them, and we need for that to be the final question. Does this policy pass or not? Is it growing or degrading soil?
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So we know that there's a generational change happening in agriculture. What do you think would make it easier for young people to enter agriculture as a career?
I think that the economic returns to agriculture need to be better because you tend to have people with intense passion for this going into it. What's that saying? I think Michael Pollan said something to the effect of, right now we have wealthy farmers growing low quality food for poor people, and we have poor farmers growing high quality food for rich people, and finding a middle ground. And one thing I believe is that farming isn't anymore and can't be in the future just about growing food. It has to be about growing environmental security, especially water security. And that if the rest of society wants clean water, available water, reduced flooding and so forth, there are going to start to be policies that reward land managers for improving water cycling. And the potential for farmers to make more money and not just growing food and being paid for the volume of a commodity, but rather being paid for the full range of production, such as growing clean, stable water cycle.
Great. Well, Abe, I thank you so much for being involved in these interviews, and I'm sure people are going to really appreciate what you've got to say. Thanks again.
Thank you, Warren. Appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.